that'd be great.
Focused on the person, right?
All right, thank you. Bye. All right, everybody, this is your 5-minute warning. Grab the last of the pizza, some drinks, and find yourself a seat. We're going to be focusing on this side of the room, so you may want to slide over and fill in over here. And while I have the sponsor slides rolling, I want to both apologize and give a little bit of an extra plug for Wingswept, because I have not gotten their slide into the deck yet. So in lieu of them actually being in the deck with all the rest of the sponsors, they're getting a special shout out. Next month I'll definitely have them in the deck with the rest of the sponsors as well. So Wingswept is one of the sponsors that are helping to provide this event and food for everybody. All right, I hope everybody's had an opportunity to have some pizza, grab a drink, thank our sponsors. Let's see here. I've got a few notes before we kick things off. So everybody is here for the Raleigh SEO meetup, right? Nobody got lost or decided that they didn't want to deal with rush hour traffic and just pulled into the nearest building. So I have a trick for you for next time if you do want to avoid rush hour. The ground floor here is walk-in co-working, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So you can come down here and use the co-working space, and then at 5 o'clock, when everybody else is stuck in traffic trying to fight their way down here, I have the networking pizza party. Normally, we have the pizza delivered on time. This week it was a little bit late, so it flowed down into the room, this room here. But usually the networking pizza party wraps up at 6:30, and then everybody comes down here for the presentation for the month. Then this meeting runs from 6:30 until 8, and then I chase everybody out of this building at 8, but that doesn't mean that you have to go home. Usually there's a small group that goes over to Rookies and has a beer there, and then talks about exchanging business cards, collecting resumes, that kind of fun stuff. With that in mind, one of the things that I regularly try to do, and since I reminded myself, I'll make sure I do this month. Let's go around the room and get a quick show of hands. Who here knows about a job opening or works for a company that's currently hiring for somebody in online marketing and SEO? Just knows about an opening. Got half a dozen or so people. Everybody take note of which hands are up in the air. All right, the next question is, who's looking? Who's currently on the job market looking for a position, interested in an opening? Got a couple of hands up there. So it looks like it's a buyer's market. So definitely keep track of whose hands were up that know about job openings, and during the networking part at the end of the event, you might want to chat with those folks and vice versa. Also, you may have noticed on the roll here, I've got some of our sponsors. They are A2 Hosting, DeepCrawl, Look to the Right, The Design, Reunion Marketing, Wingswept, and Opsis. And they are the folks that help us to be able to have this space, to be able to have these meetings, to be able to have pizza and drinks for everybody. So a great way to ensure that that continues is to grab your portable device, everybody's got one in your pocket, snap a picture of some sort, something interesting, creative, post it up on your favorite social media channel, and mention one or more of these sponsors in that thank you note, so that way when I hit them up for renewing their sponsorship, they have heard from us, and more than they've heard from just me, because hearing from me is great. Hearing from you guys really helps to seal the deal. Yes? Thank you very much. They have rebranded to The Digital, and I need to update everything, including the logo that's in the slide there. We're actually working through that process right now. So The Design is now The Digital. Also, one more announcement. What is content marketing in 2019? That is the topic that we have coming up for March. I actually have the entire calendar of events for the year already up on the Meetup website. So take a look ahead, see which events are interesting to you, and get your RSVP in. So that way you can have a spot at those events. And without further ado, I'm doing a one-man show kind of thing this month. Normally I have someone that helps me with setting up the video, Keith. He was available via phone call, so I was back there chatting with him, trying to figure out how's all this work, getting all the video equipment together. We are live streaming to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And so folks that can't make it here and be with us in person are also able to live tweet their questions in during the event. Normally he runs all of that. He's out of town. And so I get to kick things off and do the presentation for you guys. We're this month going to dive into data-driven marketing with WordPress. Last month, this is a continuation off of an introductory kind of series. Last month we did an intro to SEO, and gave a very broad overview of search engine optimization. So a little bit about me. My name is Frank Jones. My business is at opsis.com. I organize the Raleigh SEO Meetup, the event that all of you guys are at now. I also host the WordPress Help Desk events in RTP. That's a weekly series each Wednesday where we actually work on problems that people are having with WordPress. You bring out your laptop and we try to solve a problem. I recognize a few faces, so I hope they've been liking those events. They keep showing up to them, so those have been pretty popular. Basically, I help people with WordPress management and online marketing at opsis.com. So we're going to delve into the fundamentals of online marketing. I noticed that several people already have notepads out, but a few people do not. Maybe you have mobile devices that you're using to take notes. This is one of those talks where I'm going to actually ask you to write down some things and think about your business a little bit. So if you don't have your notes out yet, grab them. The things that we're going to cover are how to measure your success with online marketing, common goals for internet marketing campaigns, ways to connect goals to KPI and ROI, quick show of hands, that way I can get a little bit of feedback on who I'm talking to in the audience. Does anybody not know what KPI or ROI means? Go ahead and throw your hand up. All right, good. You're lying. But at least a few people. That's why I threw them both together. Somebody's going to get hooked on at least one of them. So KPI is key performance indicators. ROI is return on investment. KPI is how you are able to measure getting closer to whether or not you're getting that return on investment. So ideally, we want to measure everything in dollars, but not everything is easy to measure, and so sometimes we have to have a secondary measurement that sort of backs into whether or not we're moving towards dollars. That's a very basic explanation of KPI. You guys can argue with me afterwards if you want to get into the nitty-gritty. So how to avoid common technical challenges and places to go for more information, guidance, and support. If there are any other terms that I throw out on this deck, feel free to throw your hand up and ask me to define that. I'm happy to. Here's those quick questions where I hope you have those notepads ready, because this is a bit of an interactive presentation. First question, what do you want people to do when they visit your website? If you don't personally own the business, then you're managing a website or you're working on a project for a website, or pick one particular client that you can walk through these questions on, and you can think of all your other clients afterwards. So when somebody arrives at your website, what do you want people to do when they get there? Okay. All of those are interesting ideas. They might apply to specific pages, but generally you're going to need to connect what you want somebody to do on your website to the bottom line on your business. And if they click on a link, think about what they just read, return to the site, you haven't generated money on any of those things. So you have to get down to what is that one thing that you really want people to do. There may be some secondary things that if they're not going to do this action that gets you to be able to generate some revenue, maybe returning to the site, thinking about what they just read, clicking on links, those are some secondary objectives. But you got to get to what is that core thing that moves the needle for your business. Next thing to think about is how much revenue does your website generate for your business each month? Divide that by 30 to calculate each day. Here we're kind of getting into what's that website worth every day? A lot of people neglect investing in their website because they think of it as a secondary or tertiary expense for their business, or maybe even further down the line. But if you think about how much is coming through that door, it's easy to think about the facade of your physical building of your business and how you need that to look, and how you need it to have a professional appearance. Look at how much is coming through the door on your website, and think about how much you need to invest in making that look nice, and do what you want. How much time have you and your team spent working on your website and not your business? Multiply this by your hourly rate to calculate the cost to your business. And do you know which online marketing efforts are working and how much revenue comes from each campaign? right, now that you got some idea of where you're at with your business, yeah.
I have a question. So, what if you have a blog and your KPI is for people to click and read that blog, so that um, so that you can get revenue from the different advertisers that you have. Do those still apply for that as well?
So.
Because I'm not selling anything. I have just writing. I want to have people able to read it.
So if you're selling ads, that's the thing that you're selling.
Basically, you're selling ads.
You're selling one of two things: the click in a CPC model, or the view of the ad in the CPM model. CPC, cost per click; CPM, cost per thousand. And if you think back to your Roman numerals, that's where that M comes from for thousand. What you're actually trying to do is get more eyeballs to look at the ads. That's your CPM side, and get more people to click on the ads. So you don't really care if they read the article. And that's where you get into.
That's probably true.
That's
points of view, it's probably not, but yes, you're right.
Depending on how much you care personally determines where you fall in the scale of content that leads over towards, say, a BuzzSumo kind of article, where they blatantly do not care if you read the content. You need to click the ad, right? They're going after eyeballs with clickbait kind of headlines. They do a wonderful job. They've got a very specific business model. That may not be what you want to build, but you are in the same space. How much you want to go in that direction determines what type of content you're going to put out. Does that make sense?
Do you have to choose CPM or CPC?
Generally with ads, you're going to be monetizing with both of those, because ultimately your advertiser does want to get that click off of your website. But you would probably prefer the CPM to have people look at the ads and just keep clicking through your content, because then they can keep seeing ads. You can keep them on the website longer seeing more ads. But your advertiser wants to see people clicking over to go buy their product or service. So you got to sort of service both. I wanted to delve into goal tracking and analytics. So once you have an idea of what you want people to be doing on your website, you can start putting some numbers to go with how much that action is worth to your site, clicking on links, following through on affiliate links and such. There's various ways that you can track how many people are actually clicking through on different links and such. Submitting forms, whatever that action is, and we're going to get into some of those possible key performance indicators in just a minute. But you are able to measure those and assign a dollar value, and then that allows you to see where that traffic is coming from. I pulled this graph because it shows the light blue is your organic search referrals, so that's SEO. And so you can see that with this particular chart, this is mostly some just dummy data, relatively small numbers, just to show kind of what it would look like. So with the organic search referrals on this site, that is generating more of the revenue for this business. But there are some interesting little peaks with direct typing. That could be a direct mail campaign or a conference or some sort of event that you have where you're putting the name of your business and the URL directly in the hands of somebody that's then going and typing it into the search engine. If those dates line up with when you were having a booth at a conference, you could attribute that traffic to having that booth at that conference. Does that make sense? So this is some of the ways that you can get into having some data to know exactly what impact the different marketing efforts that you're doing can have in your business. So let's look at some common goals. I've got a few business models here, and yours may vary a little bit off of this, but let's throw out some ideas. What could some goals be for e-commerce websites or subscription membership sites, lead generation, and influence marketing? Any ideas for some possible goals? Sales for e-commerce? Yeah. E-commerce is a pretty easy one that can be directly into sales. Okay, yeah, definitely downloading white papers and other deliverables. What's that? Form completions, definitely. Any other ideas?
Consumer behavior data collection.
The behavior that they on the website.
Yeah.
Um,
Like Amazon, what people are interested in.
that level of analytics is a bit more complicated to dig into, but it's definitely available to be able to get into. Being able to track if you looked at these 3 different articles or this particular category of content, you can set up marketing automation that will then trigger different campaigns based on the content that people have looked at, how often they've looked at it, how many times they've looked at a particular page. If they look at the same page 3 different times, you could fire an email to them. Definitely. All right, so we've got several ideas. I threw a few on the board here. Selling products or services directly related to e-commerce, subscribing to mailing lists, following on social media channels, clicking affiliate links, and clicking on a specific ad. Each of these are things that you can measure. The question is, my favorite is that middle one, follow on social media channels. You can't pay your rent with likes. I love that. And I've talked with way too many businesses that they think the only goal is they want to get followers on social media channels. That can be a metric that you want to measure, but you need to know what the rest of the business model is. You need to measure each of those steps. You need to know whether or not you're converting on the other end to know whether 100 more followers on social media is actually worth anything to your business. So that's where we're getting to next. Connecting goals over to KPI, key performance indicators, over to ROI, your return on investment. So goals into some kind of number that you can measure into dollars and cents for your business. Next step is goals into KPI. So some of the goals that we talked about a moment ago: sales, subscriptions, memberships, leads, influence. What do you guys think? What are some KPI that you can measure that will connect to those goals? Dollars, revenue. That's a very easy, direct measurement. Most of the business models, I would guess in this room, most of the folks that I talk to in business don't quite have it that easy. There's a few more steps before you get to the dollars. So what else do you think for subscriptions, memberships?
The number of subscriptions, so the number of people that have subscribed to your service.
Yeah, the number of subscribers. Yep, definitely.
Probably maybe the number of referring websites or organizations that link to your site. I'll put that under the influence category.
Definitely influence, so backlinks from different sites referring back to your site. Before I forget also, Patrick, I think you're already monitoring the SEO Twitter handle. Awesome, in case any questions come in through there. I hear a voice in this area. There we go, okay. So the conversion rate, which conversion rate are you referring to? Exactly. So as you're creating each of the pages, a specific page may have a specific goal in mind, and the conversion for that page is somebody comes in, they interact with this content in some way, and on the other side you want to see them subscribe to your mailing list, fill out a form, click a link to download, whatever action you want to see them take, measuring did they actually take that action. That would be the conversion. Another way of looking at the conversion rate is moving them through the sales funnel. So as they move from the top of the funnel down to the bottom of the funnel and eventually become a sale, that ultimate conversion there, measuring each of those steps along the way and making sure that they're actually progressing towards a sale. and monitoring if they go back up a step, if you have some churn inside of that funnel, in order to figure out where you might need to fill in some missing content or additional information to keep people moving through that funnel. Does all that make sense to folks?
For leads, on the previous slide, it said if they click through to the ad, person advertising, so affiliate revenues would be a measure, right?
Ultimately, all of these should be connected to a revenue measurement at some point. As you fill in this funnel and you start getting some numbers to know what the conversion rates are along each step, you can work backwards to be able to see, all right, I know that for every 1,000 subscribers that I get on my email list, I can count that as $10,000 worth of revenue in my business, because they eventually work through the sales funnel and buy something. So I can do the math backwards and see that each new subscriber to my email list is worth $10. So if I'm doing a marketing campaign and I'm spending $1 to get a new email subscriber, I'm making money on that deal. If I'm spending $20 to get a new email subscriber, I'm losing money and I need to stop that. Does that make sense? So the next step is KPI to ROI. So these are several of the key performance indicators that we talked about: sales, subscribers, members, subscribers, calls, emails, visitors, followers. So what do you think the return on investment might be for each of those categories? Any ideas?
Sales is some of the dollars.
Depends on your industry. Like they say, like you say you're a general contractor, someone might subscribe to your list. You're saying what really is the ROI? Like I've looked at some, like I'm working on a general contractor's website. They say a good return conversion rate would be 5%. People, visitors to the website turning into actual customers.
Okay.
That's
So that's a good conversion rate.
statistically someone said Forbes, I don't know.
So across this room, with all the suggestions that we've been getting, a lot of us seem to be slanted towards business, where generally the ROIs are going to be rooted in dollars. But with influence and getting subscribers, calls, emails, sometimes that ROI could be in the form of spreading your ideas, sharing information to a wider audience. If you're a nonprofit organization, it could be the impact that you have in your community that you're trying to serve. It could also be, if you want to tie the nonprofit organization back to dollars, it could be eventually donors, because you leverage that impact to try to get more donors to help support your cause. So here's some ROI. If you're an influencer, you might be building up visitors, subscribers, and followers. And while followers don't pay the rent, the sponsorship opportunities that come with that and the ad revenue that comes with that does pay the rent. And so there is some conversion rate of new Facebook followers to additional dollars that you can receive in ad revenue, or higher premiums that you can charge for sponsorship collaborations. Next thing I have here is a few different formulas, just trying to break this down and get you thinking about how the different components come together. I gave a brief example as well. On a e-commerce site, it's pretty straightforward. Profit from a sale equals return on investment. But kind of what you were getting at with that article that you had mentioned, with the 5% conversion rate for traffic on the website, that's where you're using some kind of a model like this. You have X number of traffic to your website multiplied by the 5% conversion rate. That's how many sales you expect each month, each year, each quarter, whatever that breakdown is. And then you can measure whether or not that model is actually working, if you're coming in above or below your projected targets. And then you can also, as you have these conversion rates and such, gentleman in the back was talking about working with the different conversion rates. So as you're building out that funnel, each step has a conversion rate. once you have those measurements, you can look at the funnel as a whole, and you may see that in 3 different places you have a conversion rate. The first conversion rate is 90% of people move from the first step to the second step. But then from the second step to the third step, you only have 10% of the people that make that step. And then from the third step to the fourth step, you're back at 80% of the people to make that step. If you have that math in place, you can then go back and look at, oh, I'm definitely losing them here between step 2 and 3. Only 10% of the people are making that jump. I need to focus on that piece of my funnel. If you don't have that math, all you do is you look at, oh, I'm talking to this many people on my website, and only this many people are buying my product, but I don't know the 4 steps that they're going through each of the conversion rates in between. Does that make sense? Have I lost anybody? That's pretty straightforward. All right. So some technical challenges that you run into with your website. The reason I mentioned keeping the website up to date and online and functional is that I work in the WordPress space, and maybe you won't be surprised, but there's quite a few times that I see 20+ updates that are past due on clients' websites. Keeping your website up to date using the latest technologies, making sure that you don't have security vulnerabilities, is a good way to avoid having Google kick it off of the search results. They estimate that every day they blacklist about 10,000 websites daily. So you don't want to be one of those, because then you just lose all search traffic. If your website is on the blacklist, generally you're blacklisted because you have viruses and malware on your website. You've been hacked. A good number of people are not even aware that their site has been hacked, because a good hacker wants to use the CPU and resources that you have for your website, and so they want your website to keep operating smooth while they set up another website on the back end that's hidden, that they send emails to all of us saying, hey, your credit card has whatever, please log in here, and they send people over to that website to steal their login information for their bank account. But they want to make sure that you don't know it, so that way you don't clean it up. Google recognizes which server that's hosted on and then delists your website eventually. If you are set up with Google Search Console and checking there regularly, when things like this happen, they will give you notices. They will send you emails directly. If you search for your own business in the search results, when it comes up, when this first starts happening to your site, there will be a big banner that says, Google does not trust this website. Do you really want to go look at it? If that's your website and you're seeing that banner, it's past time to take action. But if you're being vigilant about updates, making sure that you have backup copies of your website and that you're doing regular security scans on your site, it's generally not an issue. There's the way to describe security is you want to make it appealing for them to go and rob your neighbor's house. So the same thing with the security at your own house. If you have a motion sensor light and a deadbolt on the door, most people are just going to keep walking down the neighborhood until they find the guy that doesn't have the motion sensor light and go break into their house. And then if you live in a neighborhood where everybody's got motion sensor lights, they're going to keep walking down the road until they find the one where there's not a yappy dog barking inside the house that's going to be a bit of a nuisance. Follow me?
Can we assume if we are hosting through, let's say, Bluehost or HostGator, that they are doing some active monitoring?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No. They promise that they will have your website on their server. They don't promise that it's secure. They don't promise that it's not hacked. They try to keep their servers secure, so they'll do their best to make sure that if there is a hack, it doesn't expand beyond your site, and if it's too egregious, they'll just delete your site so they don't have to deal with it. But there again, you have to get pretty far gone before they're even going to consider deleting it or anything. They're going to be sending you emails and telling you need to address this. I have had clients that have had their site quarantined by their hosting provider, and their hosting provider says, look, you're not going to be able to use any other resources on this server until you get all this file system cleaned up, and we're not making this publicly available until it's cleaned up. And then they call me crying, and it's never fun. Any other questions? All right. So essentially what I was getting at there, you already know this. Back up your data, avoid excessive customizations, use strong passwords, don't share your accounts, and install updates. The don't share your accounts and using strong passwords, I can't believe I actually still have to say those things, but towards the end of last year I had a client contact me saying that their website was hacked, and I asked them to give me login information so that way I could take a look at it, and I kid you not, their password was capital P, ASS, WORD, 123. And I replied immediately and said, I know why you were hacked. I figured out how they did it. They had a dictionary and looked up your password. Yes? In that statement there, I'm focusing mostly on people that are not too tech savvy, and they get in there and start trying to install every plugin that they've ever seen or every theme. There's a classic commercial, there's an app for that, and they install all of them, and I think all of us have experienced this on your phone, where you install all of the apps and then your phone can't do anything because it's loaded down with all of the apps. Same thing with your website. If you install all the plugins, you're just introducing a tremendous number of breakpoints. You're also trusting each and every one of those developers to be able to work well together and not accidentally bump into each other's code, which rarely works out well. So focus on the business objectives. Install what you need to be able to run your business and not every shiny object that you can find on the internet. Does that make sense? So I already showed this, so I'll just go back to it. But I do like to ask a quick show of hands. Who here backs up their data on a regular basis? All right, so we do have a few people that left their hands down, so I don't have to call everybody liars. 39% of US participants surveyed admitted, keyword there is that they admitted, that they never back up their data. So make sure that you do have your backups. With WordPress, if you're going to be a WordPress developer, you should be familiar with all of the things listed here and then some. Doing the WordPress help desk events that I do on Wednesday, I don't generally call myself a developer because I don't work elbow deep in code all the time, but I've been becoming more and more comfortable with the idea of calling myself a developer because of the things that people have brought to me, having spent hundreds of dollars hiring so-called professional developers to work on PHP on their site that they can't fix, and in under an hour, working with 10 other people, I'm able to help them fix the problem, and I'm not tooting my own horn at all. There are people that are far better than me at PHP. What I'm actually doing is shaming the people that collected hundreds of dollars and called themselves developers. So if you're going to work with somebody, make sure that they know those things, and if you don't know those things, at least be able to define them and quiz them before you hire them to work on your website. Yeah?
One of the things you have listed there are child and parent names.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit when you're talking about professional consulting site or a site that's not aimed for children in any way, shape, or form, and how you deal with that? I mean, I'll get complaints because some of it's not on my website, but on a sort of a test website that's sitting out there. It's meant for adults. It's meant for people in a specific industry that has nothing to do with children. We'll get complaints from parents saying, "Hey, my kid tripped over this." Well,
So this is also specific. This is also specific to WordPress development. So within WordPress development, there's a technical idea of child and parent themes, and it's the way that the different themes work together. WordPress has a open source user manual that's called the Codex, and the Codex has a really good article on child themes. I always recommend people that are starting out with building WordPress websites take a look at that and read over it, and then actually go through by hand building a child theme in order to understand how each of the files work together. There are plugins that help you to create a child theme, and for a business process it's a good idea to use those plugins, but it's still a really good learning exercise to at least do it once by hand to understand how those files interact. But that's specific to WordPress development.
I'm by no means a developer of any site.
Oh yeah. I wanted to give a good little rundown of some keywords, that way folks that are in the room that are not necessarily doing the development but are probably hiring or making some decisions about who to hire or who to trust your site to. If you can Google these things, get some definitions, and then when you're interviewing that person, ask them pointed questions about these things. If they don't have good answers, you can quickly be able to vet who is calling themselves a developer and who actually is a developer. Does that make sense? So those events, Raleigh SEO Meetup, I think you guys have heard about it. WordPress Help Desk, I've mentioned it. All of those are on the events calendar at opsis.com/events. And those are both free. So I've shared a lot of information about how to be able to measure what's going on in your business and start making changes. And I don't want folks to go away from this talk and not do anything with the information that I've shared. So who's ready to actually do something on your website? Anybody? Show of hands. A few people. Good. So if you make an accountability appointment with a person to whom you've committed, you're 95% more likely to actually take action on that. What you need to do, you have your notepad there. Write down right now, before you forget, while it's fresh in your mind, what is the one thing that you're going to actually do? Maybe you are going to run that backup that you've been meaning to do for a while, or stop using password as your password. By the way, just FYI, passwords should be very strong, preferably randomly generated mixture of letters, capital and lowercase, numbers, special characters, and punctuation. In the neighborhood of 15 or more characters in length. It's a really good idea to use a password manager to keep track of all of that, especially if you work in this industry. I have a little over 1,000 websites that each has a unique password like that. There's no way I can remember all of them, but I use software to keep track of all that.
So the password manager, is that downloadable on your machine, or is that kept somewhere?
It's on my machine and it's on my phone. It stores the information in an encrypted file. The company tells you when you set your password with them, do not forget it. There is no recovery option. And if you forget it, the only thing that they can do is delete your file and have you set up all new passwords for all of your accounts. So you do have one strong password that you have to remember, and the company storing that file cannot read that file because of the level of encryption that's on it. So it's in a very secure place. And I use LastPass, by the way. So yeah, I used it for a lot of years. The only reason I've moved to a paid version is because I now have a team that I work with, and so each of them I want to have a LastPass account for them, and at the same time I want to have the central authority to be able to terminate their access to that account. So that's worth a few dollars a month. So what will you complete? Make sure it's measurable and realistic. We're focusing on SMART goals. When will you have this done? A specific date. Write it down. And how do you want me to follow up with you? You are welcome to pick an accountability partner, but if you would like me to be that accountability partner, I am happy to do that. There's my contact information. I will simply set a calendar reminder for myself to call you, text you, email you, whatever the case may be. And I will not follow up with any kind of marketing message or put you on my email list, because we all have too much email anyway, and I don't like adding people that don't want to be on the list anyway. So Or feel free to pick an accountability partner, shoot them a message, and tell them to follow up with you on a specific date to make sure that you've actually done what you say you're going to do. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. We're going to switch over to doing a little bit of networking, and we got about 45 minutes until we head over. Anybody going to Rookies this evening? I know that there's some crazy weather, so maybe folks are wanting to head home. All right, so that way nobody shows up at Rookies all alone. We're going to cancel that part. So, thank you much. Yes, sir. Did you end the broadcast? Let me make sure the broadcast ends real quick.